Jack Riley watched the blue glow of Earth fade into the darkness of space through the small viewport of his ship. The planet looked peaceful from this distance. No one could see the political mess and broken promises he was leaving behind. 10 years as an Earth Alliance pilot. And this was how it ended. A small, barely functioning scout vessel purchased with his last credits, and a dishonorable discharge that still burned in his chest like acid. New destination? Asked the ship's basic AI system. Away, Jack said. Just plot a course beyond Alliance territory. The ship hummed as it calculated. Jack had named it the Nomad, fitting for a man with no home to return to. 3 weeks ago, he had refused orders to bomb a civilian settlement on Proxima Centauri's largest moon. The military tribunal had called it insubordination. Jack called it basic human decency. It didn't matter now. Jack moved through the cramped cabin, checking systems and supplies. The Nomad was an older model, decommissioned military scout vessel with minimal comforts, but solid engines and decent shields. It would have to do. He slept as the ship carried him deeper into unexplored space. Days passed in quiet solitude. Jack reviewed star charts, marking potential systems to explore. No human had ventured this far beyond the border worlds. On the 12th day, alarms blared. Jack jolted awake, rushing to the control panel. Unknown vessels detected, the AI reported. 2 larger ships pursuing a damaged vessel. Jack enhanced the view screen. The pursued ship had an unusual design, clearly not human. The 2 attacking ships fired energy weapons at the fleeing vessel, which maneuvered desperately despite visible damage to one of its engines. First contact, and it's a space mugging, Jack muttered. He should ignore it. This wasn't his fight. The Alliance would want him to observe and report back. But Jack wasn't Alliance anymore. Prepare defensive systems, he ordered. Intercept course. The Nomad accelerated toward the conflict. Jack opened communications on all frequencies. Attention vessels. This is Commander Jack Riley of Earth. Cease your attack or face consequences. No response came. The attackers continued their pursuit. Jack sighed. Always the hard way. He studied their flight patterns for 30 seconds, noting their predictable attack formations. The pursuers moved with machine-like precision, effective but entirely without creativity. The Nomad darted forward, its small size making it surprisingly nimble. Jack looped beneath the first attacker ship, firing precisely at junction points in its hull that his military training had taught him would be vulnerable on most vessels. The attacker ship spun as its propulsion system faltered. The second ship turned to face Jack, firing a barrage that the Nomad barely avoided. Jack switched tactics, accelerating directly toward the second ship before cutting engines and rotating to slide past it sideways while firing at its weapon systems. The unorthodox maneuver caught the attacker by surprise. Several shots connected, disabling its main weapons array. Both attackers, damaged and facing an opponent who didn't fight according to any pattern they recognized, retreated into the darkness of space. Jack approached the damaged ship cautiously. Now that he could see it clearly, the design was unlike anything in Alliance records. The vessel was elegant, with flowing lines that reminded him of sea creatures from Earth's oceans. A transmission came through, filled with sounds no human had heard before. The Nomad's translation system struggled before producing broken English. Unknown savior, gratitude extended, your battle methods, incomprehensible to our models. Jack smiled for the first time in weeks. I get that a lot. The alien vessel's entry port opened in what Jack interpreted as an invitation. He carefully docked the Nomad with the larger ship. When the airlock opened, Jack found himself facing 3 tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and large, curious eyes. They studied him with evident fascination. You are human, one asked through a translation device. Last one for light years, Jack replied. Name's Jack Riley. The tallest alien stepped forward. I am Ambassador Zern of the Viralty Collective. Your intervention was unexpected. Our predictive models failed to anticipate your tactics. Jack shrugged. Humans tend to surprise people. Zern's large eyes blinked slowly. We have never encountered your kind before. The way you fought, it followed no logical pattern our systems could identify. That's kind of our specialty, Jack said. Being unpredictable. The aliens exchanged glances that seemed meaningful. Perhaps, Zern said, this unpredictability is exactly what our galaxy needs right now. Jack stood at the wide viewport of Ambassador Zern's ship, watching as they approached the Viralti home system. He had never seen anything like it. 3 suns of different colors orbited each other, with 17 planets moving in perfect harmony around them. Our world is the 4th from the center, Zern explained, standing beside Jack. We call it Harmony. The planet grew larger as they approached. Its surface shimmered with silver cities and vast blue oceans. Ships of various designs moved in organized patterns around orbital stations. It's beautiful, Jack said. You are the first human to see it, Zern replied. Your arrival will cause much interest. Jack felt a twinge of worry. I'm not exactly the best ambassador for Earth. I left under difficult circumstances. Zern's skin changed to a lighter shade, which Jack had learned indicated amusement. Perhaps that makes you the perfect ambassador. You think differently. Their ship docked at the main orbital station. Jack followed Zern through gleaming hallways where other Viralti stopped to stare at him. Some used devices to scan him from a distance. They entered a large chamber where 12 aliens of different species sat in a semicircle. None looked even remotely human. Some had multiple limbs, others had no limbs at all. One appeared to be made of crystalline structures. The conclave representatives, Zern explained quietly. 17 species who share this region of space. A tall, insect-like being rose from the center seat. Ambassador Zern explained the presence of this unknown species. Honored speaker, this is Jack Riley of Earth. He saved our diplomatic vessel from raiders using methods we could not predict. I believe his presence is significant. The speaker turned compound eyes toward Jack. Your species is unknown to us. Our probes have not ventured to your region. We're relatively new to space travel, Jack said. Just a couple hundred years of interstellar capability. A ripple of sounds, perhaps surprise, moved through the chamber. Yet you defeated raiders our defense systems struggle with, asked a being that seemed to float above its seat. Jack shrugged. I didn't follow patterns. Humans tend to improvise. Improvise. The speaker tested the word. You make decisions without full calculation of outcomes. All the time, Jack replied. Sometimes the best solution isn't the logical one. The chamber fell silent. The representatives exchanged glances. Impossible, said a small furry creature. Decision-making requires complete analysis. Jack smiled. Not for humans. We call it intuition, gut feeling, or sometimes just a lucky guess. The silence deepened. Jack realized he had said something profound to them, though it seemed ordinary to him. The meeting continued for hours. Each representative questioned Jack about human society, technology, and especially how humans made decisions. They seemed bothered by his answers about emotions guiding choices. As they left the chamber, Zern explained, every species in the conclave evolved through logic-based decision-making. We expanded through careful planning and predictive models. Your kind evolved differently. Later, in private quarters assigned to Jack, a message arrived requesting his presence at an emergency session. A diplomatic crisis had erupted between 2 conclave species over a shared mining moon. Jack arrived to find the chamber in disorder. Representatives argued about resource allocations and historical claims. Their logical arguments had reached an impasse where both sides were mathematically correct, but completely deadlocked. After listening for several minutes, Jack stepped forward. May I suggest something? The speaker hesitated, then nodded. Jack proposed a solution involving shared control that shifted seasonally, allowing both species access but at different peak times. He added a joke about taking turns, which confused the representatives but somehow broke the tension. To his surprise, both sides accepted the compromise. As they left, Zern approached Jack. "Your solution was not optimal for either party by our calculations. But both sides felt heard and got something they wanted," Jack replied. "Felt." Zern repeated the word carefully. "This concept fascinates us. The council scientists wish to study you, if you permit." Jack looked out at the unfamiliar stars. "Not much else on my calendar." "There is more," Zern added. "A signal was sent after today's session. To your Earth." Jack froze. "What?" "The Conclave wishes to know if there are more like you," Zern said. "Humans may be exactly what our ordered galaxy has been missing." 3 months passed quickly as Jack adjusted to life among the Conclave species. The aliens studied his every move, fascinated by how a human approached problems. Jack found their logical, predictable nature both refreshing and sometimes frustrating. He stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching ships arrive and depart, when Zern hurried in. "A vessel approaches." From Earth, Zern announced, skin flickering with excitement patterns. Jack's heart raced. "Already? I didn't think they'd come so soon." "They responded immediately to our signal. Their ship is small but fast." Jack felt a mix of hope and worry. Would they arrest him for his past? Or had news of first contact with the Conclave overridden his problems back home? The Earth vessel docked 2 hours later. Jack stood with Zern and 3 other Conclave representatives as the airlock opened. A woman stepped through first, wearing the blue uniform of Earth Science Division. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her eyes narrowed when she saw Jack. "Commander Riley," she said coldly. "I didn't expect to find you here." "Dr. Laura Winters," Jack replied, recognizing her from briefings years ago. "Welcome to Harmony Station." Lara turned to the aliens. "I'm Dr. Laura Winters, Chief Cynobiologist for Earth Alliance. We received your transmission and came to establish formal contact." 4 more humans filed in behind her, 2 scientists and 2 security officers. Later, in the station's conference room, tensions rose. "You were discharged for insubordination," Lara said to Jack when they had a moment alone. "Now we find you playing ambassador to the biggest first contact in human history." "I was in the right place at the right time," Jack said. "You abandoned Earth." "Earth abandoned me first," he replied. "But that's not important now. The Conclave has technology beyond anything we've developed. And they're peaceful, unless you count their curiosity as a weapon." Lara's expression softened slightly. "The Alliance wants to establish relations. They've authorized me to begin the process." An alarm blared throughout the station before Jack could respond. Zern rushed in. "Emergency. Multiple systems are failing across Harmony." Jack and Lara followed Zern to the command center, where Conclave members worked frantically at control panels. "What's happening?" Jack asked. "A pathogen in our network systems," explained a crystal-bodied alien. "It blocks our normal operations and replicates. We cannot stop it with standard protocols." Lara moved closer to the displays. "A virus? In your computers?" "Not exactly," Zern said. "Our systems are partially biological. This pathogen affects the living components." The crystal alien turned to them. "Our logic-based solutions cannot adapt quickly enough. The pathogen changes its pattern every 6.2 minutes. Jack looked at Lara. Earth dealt with computer viruses for centuries before developing quantum systems. Lara nodded slowly. "We might be able to help." She turned to her team. "We need to set up manual overrides, old school, like we used to do on colony outposts." For the next 12 hours, the humans worked alongside the Conclave engineers, while alien systems crashed around them. Jack and Lara's team set up physical switches and manual controls that bypassed infected pathways. It was primitive by Conclave standards, but the pathogen couldn't affect simple mechanical switches. Life support stabilized first, then communications. By the 20-hour mark, they had isolated the pathogen in a contained section of the network. Zern approached Jack and Laura as they rested, exhausted. Your solution was unexpected. No species in the conclave would have considered returning to manual controls. Sometimes going backward is the way forward, Jack said. Lara added, humans had to learn the hard way that technology isn't always the answer. Zern's skin rippled with a new pattern Jack hadn't seen before. The Council is discussing this now. Your species' ability to improvise, to think in what we would consider primitive terms. It saved millions of lives today. Lara looked at Jack, her earlier hostility gone. Maybe that's why I was so quick to judge you, Riley. Your improvisation in battle seemed like betrayal to us. But it's the same quality that helps us adapt. The conclave scientist who created our prediction models wishes to meet you both, Zern said. She believes humanity's unpredictability may be not a flaw of evolution, but its greatest achievement. Jack and Lara stood before a massive screen in the ancient archives of Harmony Station. The crystal alien, who had introduced herself as Scholar Vex, moved her spindly limbs over the controls. These records are rarely accessed, Vex said. Most conclave members consider them historical curiosities rather than valuable data. Images appeared on the screen, strange vessels with sharp, angular designs, unlike the flowing shapes of conclave ships. The vessels moved in erratic patterns, attacking conclave worlds. The Void Heralds, Vex explained. They appeared 5,000 years ago and nearly destroyed the conclave before suddenly retreating. They don't look like any of your species, Lara noted, studying the images carefully. They are not of the conclave, Zern said from behind them. We never established communication. They attacked without warning or apparent reason. Jack watched the battle footage. Their movements are familiar somehow. Vex tilted her crystalline head. Familiar? How? They don't use standard attack formations, Jack explained. They're using something like guerrilla tactics. Strike fast, retreat, hit from another angle. Earth military history is full of examples. Lara nodded. They're fighting like humans would against a superior force. The aliens exchanged glances. This is why we brought you here, Zern said. 3 outposts on the outer rim have gone silent in the past month. Probe data shows damage patterns matching these ancient records. Jack felt a chill. You think the Void Heralds are coming back? We cannot be certain, Vex said. The Conclave Council is divided. Some believe it is a new species with similar technology. Others think the records were exaggerated. 5,000 years is a long time to hold a grudge, Lara said. Jack studied the footage more closely. Your species all rely on logic and pattern. What if you're facing an enemy that deliberately avoids patterns? You'd be vulnerable. Zern's skin darkened with concern. This is the minority position I hold in the Council. If the Heralds operate on chaos rather than logic, our defense systems would be inadequate. Show us the recent probe data, Jack requested. Vex brought up new images. The similarities were clear. The same angular ships, the same hit-and-run tactics. The Council has approved a research mission to the edge of conclave space, Zern said. We want you both to join us. 2 days later, aboard a conclave research vessel, Jack stood on the bridge with Lara and representatives from 3 conclave species. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a small outpost orbiting a barren moon. Outpost Kren 7, announced the pilot. No response to communications for 12 days. Life signs? Lara asked. None detected, replied Vex, monitoring sensors. I'm picking up residual energy readings, said one of the other aliens. Similar to conclave weapons, but with modifications. Jack studied the outpost through the view screen. The damage isn't random. See how they hit communications first, then power, then life support. That's tactical thinking. We should return and report, suggested the pilot. No, Jack said firmly. We need to go inside. If these are the Void Heralds, understanding how they think might be our only advantage. The landing team consisted of Jack, Lara, Zern, Vex, and 2 Conclave security officers. They entered the outpost through an emergency dock. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold. Their lights revealed signs of a brief but intense battle. The defenders didn't have time to mount an organized response, Jack noted, examining blast patterns on the walls. Lara knelt beside a console. They were downloading information from the outpost's database. Not destroying, gathering intelligence, Jack said. That's not random violence. That's preparation. In the central control room, Vex accessed a damaged but partially functional computer. I've recovered fragments of security recordings. The screen flickered, showing the attack. Angular ships docked with the outpost. Figures in dark armor moved with quick, coordinated precision through the corridors. Stop there, Jack said suddenly. Enhance that image. The screen zoomed in on one of the attackers. Though mostly covered in armor, a portion of an arm was visible, showing what looked unmistakably like human skin. Lara gasped. That's impossible. Humans have never been this far into space. Jack's expression darkened. Unless someone else got here before us. The journey back to Harmony Station was tense. Jack and Lara reviewed the footage countless times, searching for an explanation for what they had seen. Could it be another species that looks like humans? Zern suggested. Possible, but unlikely, Lara replied. The genetic chances of another species evolving with identical external features are astronomical. Upon their return, they found a new Earth vessel had arrived. A gleaming military ship 3 times the size of Lara's research vessel. The Earth Alliance insignia was prominently displayed on its hull. The Alliance Cruiser Frontier, Jack read from the display. That's a heavy diplomatic escort. Someone important came from Earth. In the main conference chamber, they found a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair wearing an admiral's uniform. 6 armed officers stood behind her. Fleet Admiral Diana Scott, Jack whispered to Lara. Head of Alliance Military Operations. Admiral Scott turned as they entered. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Jack. Commander Riley, I see the reports of finding you here were accurate. Her tone was cool but professional. She turned to the Conclave representatives. I apologize for any confusion. Commander Riley is not an authorized representative of Earth. We are aware of his status, Zern replied. His actions have proven valuable regardless. Scott's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm here to establish formal relations between Earth and the Conclave. We're very interested in cultural and technological exchange. Jack noted how her gaze lingered on the advanced Conclave technology around the room. The meeting proceeded with formal introductions. Admiral Scott presented credentials from Earth's government and proposed a treaty of cooperation. The Conclave representatives listened politely. When Jack and Lara attempted to share their findings about the Void Heralds, Admiral Scott interrupted. Speculation about ancient threats can wait, she said firmly. Our priority is establishing clear lines of communication and cooperation between our peoples. Later, in a private meeting room, Jack confronted the Admiral. With respect, you're ignoring critical information, he said. The Void Heralds are real, and they may have some connection to humans. Admiral Scott's expression hardened. Commander, you were discharged for a reason. Your tendency to create problems where none exist remains unchanged. I saw the evidence myself. Lara added, the threat is real. Dr. Winters, your job is to study alien biology, not play detective. Scott replied coldly. Earth needs the Conclave's technology. We're decades, maybe centuries behind them. That's my priority. Even if it means ignoring a threat that could destroy us all. Jack asked. What I'm not ignoring is the opportunity to advance Earth's position in the galaxy, Scott said. The Conclave has agreed to allow a team to study their faster-than-light technology. We leave tomorrow for their research facility. After she left, Lara turned to Jack. She's here for weapons and ships, not friendship. And she'll ignore anything that gets in the way of that goal, Jack agreed. The next day, Jack received an encrypted message from one of Lara's scientists. It contained security footage from Admiral Scott's private quarters. In it, Scott spoke with her officers about plans to secure key technology components from the research facility by any means necessary once they were inside. Jack took the evidence to Zern, who brought it before the Conclave Council. When confronted, Admiral Scott denied everything, claiming the footage was manipulated. "Commander Riley is attempting to sabotage Earth's interests," she declared. "He's a traitor to his own kind." The human delegation split. Some sided with Jack, believing the Void Herald threat was real and cooperation was vital. Others remained loyal to Admiral Scott and her mission to secure advantages for Earth. The Conclave Council watched this division with fascination. "Your species argues based on moral principles, not just logical outcomes," Vex observed to Jack. "This is unprecedented among Conclave species." "Humans are complicated," Jack said. "We can be selfish and noble at the same time." Zern approached them, skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "The Council has reached a decision. Admiral Scott's team will be limited to cultural exchange only, no technology transfer, until trust is restored." "She won't like that," Lara said. "There's more," Zern added. 3 more outposts have gone silent. The Void Heralds are moving faster than we predicted. The Council is finally taking the threat seriously." 1 month after Admiral Scott's arrival, the situation had changed dramatically. Void Herald attacks increased across the outer regions of Conclave space. The Council finally declared an emergency and formed a joint defense task force. Jack stood in the massive war room of Harmony Station, watching as representatives from all 17 Conclave species gathered around a holographic display showing recent attacks. "Their pattern remains unpredictable," said the Viralti military commander. "Our defense systems cannot anticipate their movements." "That's because they're deliberately avoiding patterns," Jack explained. "They know your species rely on logical predictions." Admiral Scott, who had reluctantly accepted the reality of the threat, crossed her arms. "If these heralds have human connections, they know exactly how to exploit your weaknesses." Lara had been working with Conclave scientists to study the biology of the attackers from tissue samples recovered at attack sites. She entered the war room with Vex. "The DNA analysis is complete," she announced. "The samples are definitely human, but with genetic modifications unlike anything we've seen. They've been engineered for space travel and combat." The room fell silent as everyone processed this news. "How is this possible?" Admiral Scott demanded. "Earth hasn't had the technology to create such modifications." "Perhaps someone else did the modifying," Jack suggested. "Or perhaps these humans have been out here much longer than we thought, evolving differently." Zern stepped forward. "The Council has voted. We must incorporate human unpredictability into our defense strategies if we are to survive." A joint task force was formed. Commander Ben Hayes, one of the officers who had sided with Jack against Admiral Scott, was appointed to lead the human military advisors. Engineer Olivia Chen, a brilliant weapons designer from Lara's team, began working with Conclave technicians. "We need to combine Earth's creative approach with Conclave advanced materials," Olivia explained as she showed Jack and Lara her designs. "These hybrid weapon systems will be unpredictable to the Heralds because they blend logical and intuitive design." Then trained Conclave defense units to adopt randomized patrol routes and battle formations, concepts that made the logical aliens deeply uncomfortable. "Your troops still hesitate when asked to act without clear patterns," Ben reported to Jack. "It goes against everything they've evolved to do." "Keep working with them," Jack encouraged. "Their survival depends on learning our way of thinking." 2 weeks later, the Void Heralds launched their largest attack yet, a coordinated strike against 3 major Conclave worlds. But this time, the defenses were ready. Jack watched from the command center as the battle unfolded. Conclave ships moved in seemingly chaotic patterns designed by human strategists. The hybrid weapon systems fired at unexpected moments, confusing the Herald vessels. "It's working," Lara said, watching the display. The heralds expected logical responses and got human chaos instead. For the first time, the Void Heralds were forced to retreat with heavy losses. After the battle, a delegation of Conclave leaders approached Jack and the human team. "Your strategies saved millions of lives today," said the council speaker. "The heralds could not adapt to the random elements you introduced." Jack nodded. "They were prepared to fight your logic, but not our unpredictability. They'll adapt eventually, but now we know their weakness." Vex's crystalline form glimmered as she spoke. "We are beginning to understand that what appeared to be chaos in human thinking actually follows patterns, just not ones our species evolved to recognize." "That's the greatest weapon humans have," Lara said. "Our thinking doesn't fit in neat boxes." Admiral Scott, who had watched the battle from the sidelines, approached Jack privately afterward. "I was wrong about you, Riley," she admitted reluctantly. "Your approach saved us today. But there's still something that doesn't make sense. How did humans get this far into space without Earth knowing? And why would they ally with these heralds?" Jack stared at the star map showing herald movement. "I think we need to go directly to the source to find out. We need to capture one of them alive." "The Council will never approve such a mission," Scott said. Jack smiled slightly. "That's why we won't ask for permission. Sometimes, the human approach means bending the rules." Jack's plan was simple but dangerous. Using a captured herald ship repaired by Olivia's team, they would venture into territory the heralds controlled. Their team was small: Jack, Lara, Zern, Vex, Commander Hayes, and 2 trusted Conclave pilots. Admiral Scott had reluctantly provided clearance but stayed behind. "If we're not back in 7 days, consider us lost," Jack told Olivia before boarding. The herald ship was uncomfortable, with sharp angles and cold metal surfaces unlike the smooth organic designs of Conclave vessels. Jack sat in the command chair, studying the unfamiliar controls. "Their technology is a mix of human and alien," Olivia had explained during their briefing. "I've adapted the systems so we can operate them, but it won't be easy." They traveled for 3 days into increasingly empty space. Conclave maps showed nothing in this region, but the herald ship's navigation system guided them confidently. "We're approaching something," announced one of the pilots on the 4th day, but sensors show nothing there. "Visual confirmation?" Jack asked. "Empty space," Zern confirmed. "Yet the ship is slowing for docking procedures." "Cloaking technology," Ben suggested, "far beyond anything Earth or the Conclave has developed." As they watched, the emptiness before them shimmered and revealed a massive structure, a space station larger than any Jack had seen, with hundreds of herald ships docked around it. "Their home base," Lara whispered. Their ship docked automatically. As they prepared to explore, Jack gave final instructions. "Stay together. Our goal is information, not confrontation." The station corridors were eerily silent. They moved carefully, following directions from the herald ship's computer toward what appeared to be a central chamber. The architecture was unlike anything from Earth or the Conclave, a strange blend of organic and mechanical elements. They entered a vast circular room filled with glowing data displays. At the center stood a pillar of swirling energy. "This isn't just a base," Vex said, scanning with her instruments. "It's some kind of research facility." Lara approached one of the displays. "These are genetic sequences, human DNA being modified." Jack studied another screen. "And these are Conclave defense plans, detailed analysis of how each species makes decisions." "Intruders detected," announced a calm voice from all around them. "Unusual combination, human and Conclave together. Interesting. Unexpected." Figures emerged from doorways around the chamber, herald soldiers in their dark armor. But they didn't attack. They simply surrounded the team, watching. A taller figure entered. Unlike the others, this herald wore no helmet. Jack gasped as he saw a human face, but with eyes that glowed with an inner light and skin that seemed to shimmer with metallic patterns. "Welcome," The figure said, "I am Architect 7. This development was not in our models." "What are you?" Lara asked. "Why do you look human?" "I was human, once." "Long ago," replied the figure. "Now I am more." "You're behind the Void Heralds," Jack stated. "Why attack the Conclave?" The figure tilted its head. "Attack? No. We test. We prepare. As we were designed to do." "Designed by whom?" Zern asked. "By the first ones, the architects who seeded this galaxy with life." The figure gestured, and the room filled with holographic displays showing star systems and evolutionary paths. They created many experiments. The conclave species evolved for logic and order. Humans evolved for emotion and adaptation. Jack's mind raced. "You're saying we were created as separate experiments?" "Yes. Two paths, never meant to meet until both reached sufficient advancement, then to be brought together." Balance. Vex's crystalline form trembled. "Our entire civilization is an experiment." "As is humanity," said Architect 7. "The Void Heralds are the test, the final challenge, created by the first ones to force cooperation between the disparate evolutionary paths." "You're killing innocent people for a test," Ben asked angrily. "Death was not the goal. Adaptation was. And now you have found each other and begun to work together. Earlier than anticipated. Surprising." Jack stepped forward. "If what you're saying is true, why reveal it now?" The figure's glowing eyes turned to him. "Because you are here, humans and conclave together, seeking truth rather than conflict." This was unexpected. "This suggests the experiment has already achieved its purpose." Word of the discovery spread quickly when Jack and his team returned to Harmony Station. The revelation that both humans and conclave species were engineered experiments created division and debate among all involved. In the Central Council chamber, representatives from Earth and all 17 conclave species gathered. Some wanted to accept the architect's plan and follow the path laid out for them. Others rejected the entire story as a trick by the Void Heralds. Admiral Scott pounded her fist on the table. "We are not lab rats. Earth will not accept being part of someone else's experiment." "The evidence is clear," countered a conclave elder. "Our evolutionary paths show signs of design. The architects clearly possess wisdom beyond our own." Jack stood silently, watching the arguments unfold. Lara moved to his side. "What are you thinking?" she asked quietly. "That there's a third option," Jack replied. "Neither blind conflict nor passive acceptance." Later that night, Jack called together a smaller group: Lara, Zern, Vex, Ben, Olivia, and a few others who had come to trust his judgment. "The architects created the Void Heralds as a test," Jack explained. "A challenge to force cooperation between humans and the Conclave. But what if we refuse the test itself?" "How?" asked Ben. Olivia leaned forward. "The Herald ships use control systems based on both human and Conclave technology. I've been studying them. With Vex's help, I think we can reprogram them. Not to destroy them," Jack added, "and not to submit to them, but to change the parameters of the test itself." His plan was bold. Using the hybrid understanding they had developed, they would create a signal that could reprogram the Void Herald constructs. Not to destroy them, but to remove their aggressive programming. "It will require precise conclave logic and human intuition working together," Vex explained. "Each alone would fail." The next day, against the orders of both Admiral Scott and the Conclave Council, they launched their mission. 3 ships, 1 human, 1 conclave, and 1 captured Herald vessel approached the Herald station. As expected, Herald ships moved to intercept them. But this time, instead of fighting, they broadcast the signal Olivia and Vex had designed. The effect was immediate. The Herald ships stopped in space. On the station, Architect 7 appeared on their communication screen. "This intervention was not in any predictive model," the being said. "You reject both conflict and submission." "Interesting." We make our own choices, Jack replied. That's what both humans and the Conclave have in common. Free will. The space around them shimmered, and new beings appeared, forms of pure energy that shifted and flowed. The true architects, Zern whispered. One of the energy beings moved forward. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds. The experiment has exceeded parameters, it communicated. Both pathways have achieved something greater together than either alone. We are not your experiments anymore, Lara said firmly. We choose our own path forward. The energy being seemed to pulse with something like approval. This is the true test, it responded. Not conflict, but choice. You have succeeded where many species before you failed. The Void Heralds powered down their weapons. The energy beings explained that they had seeded countless galaxies with life, guiding evolution along different paths. Some species chose destruction. Others accepted eternal servitude. Only those who claimed their own destiny were considered truly successful. As the architects departed, they left behind knowledge, not weapons or power, but understanding of the universe and its many inhabitants. 1 month later, Jack stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station. Earth and Conclave ships now moved freely between their worlds, sharing knowledge and culture. Lara joined him, watching the stars. Where will you go now? Back to Earth. Jack smiled. I was thinking of keeping the name Nomad for my ship. There's a whole universe of species out there, all with their own stories and paths. Need a partner? Lara asked. I thought you'd never ask, Jack replied. Beyond the station, where the 3 suns of the Viralthi system cast their multicolored light across space, a new era began. Not one designed by ancient creators, but one chosen freely by those who had once been galactic experiments and were now the authors of their own destiny.